If you have to borrow from operating to buy your McDonald's French fries and pay interest on those fries, then we have to go back to the operation and say, why? Are we not selling cattle for enough? Are we not operating correctly to make a profit? Are we not selling grain correctly? Are we not buying crop insurance correctly? Whatever that looks like. Hello, and welcome back to the podcast. Thank you very much for being here. Today, we are going to talk about the noise of forums. And there are a lot of forums online. I don't care if it's an agriculture forum, a sports forum, a fishing forum, all kinds of forums online. And they are almost worse than social media. Because what happens on social media is if it's Facebook, if it's Instagram, TikTok, whatever, people might go back and forth a couple of times, but it's not a big deal, right? They eventually move on because their attention span is just a hair shorter. What happens in forums is you get these threads that just go on forever because you have keyboard warriors that want to hear themselves. And so typically in a forum, the most knowledgeable individual is not going to comment because of the fact that they're sick and tired of uneducated people commenting. Now, there's just a lot of noise around infinite banking in general. And so I want to talk about some of that noise. Now, this might be a multi-part podcast because there is a lot of noise. And I think that it's sort of like the myth busting around infinite banking. We need to look at that noise and we need to talk about it. And we need to put into perspective who is saying that stuff. And I get that the average person understands it. If you have read anything about infinite banking, if you've read my book, if you've read Nelson's book, if you've had a conversation with me, you understand that there is more to all of this than just a book, right? Nelson had a 10-hour course. And so if you want to hear it from Nelson's mouth, go to infinitebanking.org and you can go to the store and you can grab Nelson's 10-hour video course. He would not teach this in less than 10 hours. And I had him come in and talk about it at one of my seminars. He was not super thrilled that I cut him off after 2 hours because of the fact that there's just a lot to understand. There's a lot of thought process to change, all that good stuff. But I want to address some of these things because chances are there is somebody that has that question and saying, you know what, these people are talking about that. That's a legitimate question. We don't know Mary Jo from Adam. Like, how do we know that we can trust her? Right. And I get that. Like, I have been taken from people. There's a guy that I did some Forex trading with that he is now in prison. And so I understand when you guys say, oh, geez, I don't know if I should trust her. But let's look at your sources. So let's look at a couple of things that people are saying. These comments that I'm going to address, it's funny because they're all kind of from the same person. So the first three are from the exact same person that I've never spoke to, that's never read the book, but he has a lot to say about everything that I do. His first comment was, I have a whole life policy, but if my dad lives longer, the life insurance is going to cost more than if I would have just paid my sisters with cash to buy out the farm. What? Let's think about that. He's paying premium, but now if his dad lives too long, he could have just paid cash to his sisters. To me, that indicates he does not have whole life. Because if he had a whole life insurance policy, the death benefit would keep growing and he would always have more death benefit than what he's paid in as premium. The only time I have ever, in 14 years and looking at multiple policies, the only time I have ever seen that go upside down is if they are buying some type of universal life product. A whole life should always grow. If it is an adjustable whole life, if it is something that is still tied to the market, you're going to see the fees and all of these other things that are going to make that thing not work the way it's supposed to work. And so here is somebody that is talking about the fact that he has whole life. He said, I have whole life. But if dad lives too long, I could have just paid my sisters in cash. He should always have more. So that indicates to me that he does not have the correct policy. Yet he is out there giving all sorts of free advice about how knowledgeable he is about infinite banking and whole life and how I'm an idiot. And then he says there are several tax implications that should be discussed with trusted professionals only. I would not go to the flashy people selling books. I didn't know that selling a book was a bad thing to educate people. So again, instead of educating himself, he's just going to who he feels he trusts for advice. Probably the same person that sold him this policy that is going to have less death benefit than he's paid in for premium. That is not a good option. Not a good option. That should have been addressed right away, right? Do I talk about tax implications on this podcast? Absolutely. The policy is going to mech. We need to look at that. We need to address those things. You need to talk to your accountant. You need to talk to your attorney that is doing your estate planning. All of those things come into play because if you pass away, is it part of your estate? The death benefit is not estate tax free. It is only income tax free. But again, we have noise. So think about this. If you're listening to these yahoos, we have the noise out there of people that have no idea. They have never listened to a podcast, but they are giving advice. This particular individual also says he's borrowing against the life insurance policy and interest is paid to ourselves/family. Dude, you are not paying interest to yourself. That is such a misconception. That statement alone, we should just check him off the box and say, this guy has no idea what he's talking about. Because when you pay interest, that goes to the insurance company. It does not go back into your cash value. So if the insurance company charges you 5% interest, that 5% goes to the insurance company. If you pay it back at 10%, the extra 5 can possibly go into the policy as premium. That will increase cash value because premium makes money. So if you pay premium, the premium's going to go into cash value through paid up additions. That will increase cash value. If the other 5% is gone to the company, but you can only put the extra 5 in if what? Your policy can hold it. If your policy can't hold it because you've already paid the max premium, now guess what? It's going to mech. So now you have to back off. So all of the things that this guy is concerned about that I am such an idiot for, I have addressed 1,000,000 times on these podcasts. It's addressed in the book. It's addressed in Nelson's book. It's addressed everywhere. Yet this person is too scared to actually read the book because he is on these forums and he is talking about how he wants to see numbers. But then as soon as numbers are put up, he doesn't like the numbers. He doesn't like how that looks, right? And so these same people are in there asking questions and being the devil's advocate without actually educating themselves. And so you have to really pay attention to the fact that this is noise. Can you use their questions? Yes. Can most of those questions be answered through podcasts and everything else? Yes. They think that in these forums, they think that they should be able to have a 10-minute explanation about what the infinite banking concept is. No, it was a 10-hour course. If it can be done in 10 minutes and somebody can tell you about it in 10 minutes, you probably at that point are going to the wrong individual. But because they want such a quick answer and they don't want to do their due diligence, then guess what? They just think that if you can't do that for them, there's no possible way. No, what does Nelson say? You have the arrival syndrome because you don't want to learn. You're banging your head against a wall when there are people in the forum who actually are asking legitimate questions, but not ever getting legitimate answers because there are people that just will not stop with their keyboard. They should I should have and I'm really thinking about this. I should have a keyboard warrior board and be like, hey, you are the top winner this week of being the keyboard warrior online. Like even on my Facebook posts and those sort of things, people will just type scam. That's it. That's all you got, my friend, is one word and you haven't looked at anything. You have no explanation. Like, how can anybody take you seriously? But now do you feel better because you got that out? You hit the keyboard and you got that out. Your little thumbs were going really, really fast and you got that out and you feel really good about yourself, right? But people on the outside who really want to understand this stuff are laughing at you. Like, I should give awards out. Okay, the next comments I'm going to address are actually really quite interesting because they are from an ex-banker. And so this is really an interesting look on how bankers' mindsets are, and not all of them. There are a lot of amazing bankers out there who understand or want to learn. But then there are some bankers that it's just their job, right? They go in, they punch the clock, they don't really care, they don't really dig into it. And so this gentleman, who was an ex-banker, said investing in whole life policy comes with opportunity cost. So number one, we're not investing. We're paying a premium. This is not an investment. It comes with an opportunity cost of what? So the fact that we have lost opportunity cost on cash, that is why we're using whole life, is because we don't have the lost opportunity cost over our lifetime by not earning uninterrupted compound interest and dividends. He is most likely saying this because he is looking at policies that are structured with all the money going to the death benefit portion of the policy. So it's going to take you 15, 20 years to break even. It's going to take a long time to build any significant cost or any significant cash value. So he is saying there's lost opportunity there. When we're structuring a policy and you get access to about 75% of that money right away, there's very little lost opportunity for 2 to 3 years. And by that point, we're cash flowing. By year 7 to 10, we broke even. All is good. Do we have a tiny bit? Absolutely. Is it enough of lost opportunity cost to outweigh what we're going to have long term? No. Because if it was, why would I be doing it? Right? I am the person that always wants to have access to my money so that I can go do those things. And we even occasionally, I will have a client who they can't have lost opportunity. They cannot give up that 25% because they might need to buy a business. They might need to buy some land. They might get an opportunity on cattle. And I will tell them, go use your cash for that, but pay yourself back for the cash you used. And now that goes into a policy because we don't have the thought process of paying ourselves back for cash, right? Which is what? Part of the infinite banking concept. That's the thought process piece. They all think the infinite banking concept is life insurance. So not one of these keyboard warriors has addressed a thought process. All they want to see is numbers. This banker also goes on to say this is not something a cash-strapped operation can even consider, which rules out most young guys. The name implies an opportunity to build a farm operation without borrowing from a bank. The name implies. Do you go past the title of the book? Do you think people can write the entire book subject or the entire book itself on the cover? So you're just going to read the cover, make an assumption, which does what? Makes an ass out of you. And so do you really? That's the thought process. That's the kind of banker that you were. I mean, that's a question I have to ask because the comment is absolutely ridiculous. And then to say that this is not good for cash strapped operations. Most young people. My new banker friend, sir, everybody's cash strapped. I don't know what kind of clients you had, but there's very few farmers, big, little, doesn't matter. Medium size, brand new, old, generational, they're all cash strapped, Mr. Banker. Because why? It takes a lot of money to operate. So if we are cash strapped, then what are we doing wrong on the other side of the business? Are we not marketing our grain? Are we not selling cabs for enough? Do we not know our numbers? The problem does not become the infinite banking concept. The problem becomes how we're running our operation. And as a banker, did he ever actually go back to the client and say, hey, you need to know your numbers. Let's teach you how to read a balance sheet. Let's teach you how to do a profit and loss statement. Why don't you hire a bookkeeper? No, he's just saying, hey, you know what? You're cash strapped. We're not going to give you any money this year, or we're going to tell you when to sell grain. The whole point of this is that we need to make the bank plan B and not plan A. So many people have the bank as their only plan. And then when the banker doesn't give them any money or tells them when they have to sell, now we have a problem. So being cash strapped is not young, it is not old. In fact, the majority of my clients are, I would say my average age client, I haven't looked in a while, but I believe it's in their 40s. And right now, I would say the majority of the people that I meet with are anywhere between 17, 18 to 35-ish. I am not seeing a lot of older people because they just don't like to change. Or they're so cash strapped that they have to wait. So yes, sometimes we do have to wait. But if we're going to wait, what are we going to do in the meantime? We're going to figure out where our money is going. We're going to figure out how we're utilizing money. We're going to think about money differently. The system of saying, hey, you just go to the bank is the problem, right? Everybody is so strapped that if something changes in their world financially, they can't make the payment. They can't buy groceries. I talked to a couple yesterday that are doing fantastically. I mean, their numbers are great. They keep their numbers. They look like they're doing great on paper. But they're borrowing their living expenses. And I said, if you have to borrow, the farm should be able to write a check to the household for $70,000, $100,000 a year. And that money should not have to be borrowed. You should not have to borrow from operating to pay the household $70,000 or $100,000 a year. If you have to borrow from operating to buy your McDonald's French fries and pay interest on those fries, then we have to go back to the operation and say, why? Are we not selling cattle for enough? Are we not operating correctly to make a profit? Are we not selling grain correctly? Are we not buying crop insurance correctly? Whatever that looks like. We need to look at the numbers of the operation and figure out, what are we doing with each enterprise, right? It goes back to ranching for profit. If you farm and you ranch, how much is the farm enterprise making you? How much are the cows making you? How much is the hay making you? Those are all separate enterprises. Is there one of them that's draining the other? Do we need to change how we do business? I see it. I see people that were strapped and they didn't have the money, and now they changed the way they operated the farm. And guess what? We can pay the household a cost of living, And we do not have to borrow that from our line of credit. And so there's such a big picture of what we're doing. And it's so interesting when you go to these forums and these people have not a clue who I am. They don't have a clue what I do. They know I wrote a book. They think I'm making a bunch of money off the book because they're even too ignorant to understand that there's not money to be made off of books. Seriously. Like, really? Come on. People write books because they want to educate other people. The people that don't want to be educated refuse to read the book. So they don't want to spend $20 and 3 hours of their time reading, but they will waste a week's worth of time arguing with people on a forum that was far more than 3 hours. So what were you doing in that time? Not learning anything, just seeing your name on a forum and being a keyboard warrior. That's what you accomplished, and you didn't help anybody because you didn't have any legitimate advice. And so as you're out there and as you're on the big bad world of the web, keep in mind, who are you getting this advice from? What does that look like? Because it surely may not be advice that is even worthwhile for you to be reading. You also are wasting your time if you are trying to find answers. Go to the sources. Go to all these podcasts. I don't listen to colleagues' podcasts. I don't know what they're saying. But from what I do hear and what I do listen to once in a while, we're all saying the same thing. So if this didn't work like this, then how can we all be repeating the exact same thing? It's not like I get together with them all week long and go, hey, okay, what are we going to talk about this week? How can we conspire to lie to everybody this week? No, absolutely not. And there are bad people in every industry. There are bad bankers. There are bad financial advisors. There are bad farmers, right? I mean, just because, let's just use a farming example. Farmers have to drive down the road, right? Some farmers are like, I own the road. I'm not getting over. I don't care. You're waiting for me because I feed this country. And then there are farmers that are like, oh, geez, I'm in your way. Let me pull out of the way so you can get by. Let me wave you by if you're on a hill and I see that nobody's coming. Let me be courteous, right? There's bad in everything. Semi-drivers will do the same thing. They'll pull out in front of you and then they hang beside that guy for half an hour and you're sitting back there going, you dipstick. Why didn't one of you just slow down so the other one can pass? There are good truckers, there are bad truckers. There's good and bad in absolutely everything we do. But yet there are certain industries like life insurance where we want to target somebody because they are trying to help other people. But the knowledge that we're using makes absolutely zero sense. All right. I have like 6 pages of these notes. So I might do another podcast on this just to continue to bust these, it's not even a myth, bust these comments that just don't make any sense, but you might be seeing them elsewhere. So you need to be educated. You need to be armed with knowledge of how to pick apart what they're saying. And I would go on these forums, but I get blocked. So I tried to go on this forum and make a comment, but I immediately, upon signing up, was blocked from doing so. There's no free speech there. And they can run their forum however they want. But just so y'all know, sometimes the good people are not making the comments because we are not allowed. We are blocked because there is an agenda on the opposite side. Much like the Book of Faces. Okay, let me know if you guys have comments, questions, concerns. MaryJo@withoutthebank.com. If you are out there and you are one of my listeners or one of my clients and you are in these forums and you are sticking up for me, I thank you. My hat's off to you. I thank you for taking the lashings and the beatings and being called names. I appreciate you taking the heat for me. If you have not gotten the book, get the book because there's a reason we wrote the book. There's a reason I wrote it, not so I can make money, for Pete's sakes. It's so that you can learn and you understand what we're teaching, because I'm not selling you something, I'm teaching you something. So grab the book, schedule your appointment, get on the calendar. I have to be gone for a couple of weeks in September for infinite banking stuff. So my calendar is out to October. So make sure that you get on the calendar, you check back. You can, people cancel and reschedule all the time. And so make sure that you're checking once in a while, and maybe you can get in sooner or get on the wait list. Okay, you guys, let me know again if you need me. Otherwise, I'll talk to you in the next podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Farming Without the Bank podcast. We hope today's episode has inspired you to take control of your finances in new ways. Don't forget to check out our website, farmingwithoutthebank.com, and engage with us on our Facebook page, Farming Without the Bank. Join us next week as we smash more financial myths and empower you to accomplish your financial goals.